Ever since the CLA was introduced to the lineup during the middle portion of last decade, we have witnessed Mercedes-Benz turn the C-Class into something far more than just an entry-level luxury sports sedan. In fact, it has become a baby S-Class. And you see that right away with the exterior styling, but also when you interact with the interior as well, it's more of a scaled-down version of an S-Class. But most importantly for a German car is the retooled driving dynamics that's more reflective of a sedan priced around maybe $70,000 rather than $45,000 to start. And that has always been the C-Class's Achilles heel up until last generation, when the C-Class was then moved to the same platform as the S-Class. When you look at the C-Class lineage, especially around the mid-2000s, I think there was a lot of incentives to upgrade to the E-Class. And I think even though it's the brand's bread and butter, in the back of a lot of consumers' minds, they do wish they went with the E-Class for the better technology, better luxury, and more refined driving dynamics. But I think those days are certainly over with the all-new 2022 C300. Now you're probably wondering, what is all new? Because from the exterior, it kind of looks like a refreshed version of the outgoing model. But I think there's a lot more to this car than meets the eye. And that's why I am here. I want to take a deep dive into the new C300, see how it differs from last generation, but also to see, in this highly contested market, if the new Mercedes Benz C-Class really is the best or nothing. Now before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Mercedes Benz of Burlington in Burlington, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Mercedes-Benz inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. The Germans have always been one step ahead in the sedan market, and in fact, long before crossovers entered the mix, it was Mercedes-Benz and BMW that would have epic duels in these segments, with cars that excited consumers and enthusiasts alike, with exceptional driving dynamics and class-leading luxury. For most of the 21st century, there's been a lack of that competitive nature among the Germans, specifically for the C-Class, 3 Series, and A4, up until today with the all-new 2022 C300. All three brands now have a luxury sports sedan that could very well be segment leaders, as performance, technology, and design have objectively never been better. The ultimate question is whether Mercedes-Benz pushed the envelope enough to propel the C-Class to the top of this market. Starting off with pricing, the Mercedes-Benz C300 comes in at just above $45,000. But new for 2022 are 3 trim levels that come with their own set of standard features to simplify the packages and optional equipment as more customers begin to order their vehicles online. Our model today is the Pinnacle trim, which will have a starting cost of $49,500, and most of the features you'll receive will be highlighted when we check out the interior. Now built on the second iteration of Mercedes-Benz's MRA platform, the C-Class has arrived to showrooms with a refreshed look. However, what's intriguing about this new model is that this sedan is almost identical in size to last generation, yet it appears as though they extended the proportions of the hood for a more luxurious appearance. Underpinned by the same chassis that the S-Class sits on, it only seemed right that Mercedes-Benz would reshape the front fascia to resemble its larger siblings, while still retaining similarities to the outgoing model. Thanks to the remolding of the lower portion of the front bumper, the C300 has a lower and wider stance to look more aggressive and sporty, and you notice those characteristics make their way on the hood as well. The emphasis on luxury for 2022 is very prominent with the road presence, as the LED headlights and even the redesigned front grille embody class and sophistication. Of course, you can opt for the AMG line package, which will add athletic cosmetic features and muscular angles. Then moving over to the side profile, our C300 is sitting on the optional 18-inch multi-spoke wheels to complement the reserved demeanor of this luxury sedan, but 19s are available with extra packages. When it comes to the ride quality, the suspension handles the bumps relatively well, and similar to the Audi A4 and BMW 330i. But it should be worth noting that an optional sports-tuned suspension will offer an increased sense of connection to the road, and will add some rigidity when cornering. You'll have body color folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Making our way around to the back, this is where there's no mistaking the 2022 C-Class from prior model years, as the LED taillights now run horizontally, following in the same path as the E and S classes. Despite the traditional sedan silhouette, it does take some minor styling cues from the CLA, while at the same time still being upscale and not losing too much of its identity, as Mercedes-Benz's primary goal was to give their compact luxury sedan a minor refresh rather than a substantial overhaul outwardly, as the C-Class is the best seller in the four-door car lineup for the brand. Under the hood, the C300 is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that produces 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission. All new for the C-Class is a 48-volt mild hybrid system, which typically German brands tend to understate the positive impacts these systems have on gas-powered cars, not only when it pertains to performance, but also efficiency as well. With a retooled transmission, the C-Class runs buttery smooth when shifting through gears. But also, that mild hybrid system temporarily produces an additional 20 horsepower and 148 pound-feet of torque to get you from 0 to 60 below 6 seconds, but we believe it's closer to 5.5, which would be on par with the 330i and A4. Fuel efficiency is where the C-Class improves tremendously, where you can expect to receive right around 25 miles per gallon in the city and 35 miles per gallon on the highway. Stepping inside, you're greeted by a mostly new interior, which, as you can tell, the user interface is no longer connected to the digital gauge cluster, and instead it flows seamlessly down the dashboard into the center console. The door panel controls have also been refreshed, including the buttons for the power adjustable seats. This model is equipped with Mercedes-Benz's MB-Tex leatherette upholstery, which does feel quite premium, but more importantly is that the front seats have been improved to provide better support and bolstering to keep you secure on longer drives. In front of you, you'll receive the full digital gauge cluster from last generation, but this screen has received updates to the layout to be more user-friendly and easier to read. From here, you can fully customize this display to your liking, to showcase relevant info or graphics, including the navigation map like we see from BMW and Audi. It's also here where you can access the head-up display if you ordered a C-Class with the Pinnacle trim. Resolution and quality is top-notch, but best of all, you won't be squinting trying to read what's in front of you. This all leads us to the tablet-like touchscreen that dominates the dashboard and center console to give the C-Class a scaled-down version of the redesigned S-Class. While Mercedes may not introduce higher quality trim pieces and materials to a car of this segment, the claim could be made that this cabin outclasses every competitor in the luxury sports sedan market. Compared to the prior generation, there's no longer a touchpad, and instead, you can use the buttons mounted on the steering wheel to scroll through menus, or just use the touchscreen exclusively. Much like the digital gauge cluster, this user interface has cut back on the menu clutter to offer drivers a simplified experience, although it will still take time to get used to. The Pinnacle trim will introduce augmented video for the navigation screen, but some of the embedded features that you can access, such as adjusting the driver's seat automatically by plugging in your height, is phenomenal. Adding to the upscale atmosphere of the interior is the ambient lighting, which will show much better at night than during the time of day this review was filmed. To help park the C-Class, there'll be a variety of camera angles to choose from, including front and rear cameras with trajectory. What will grab your attention is the lack of buttons, as the climate control settings can be accessed by using the touchscreen. But you can quickly change the drive modes, view the different cameras, check out the vehicle settings, and adjust the volume by using the buttons mounted just below the screen. Making our way back to the center console, there'll be two cup holders that are conveniently hidden, to go along with a wireless phone charging pad tucked away out of sight. For the center storage compartment, you'll have enough room for smaller items, and you'll have two USB-C inputs. And rounding out the front seating area, we have the standard power moonroof, but you can upgrade to a panorama roof for an additional $1,000. Now for passengers in the back, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat is adjusted further back, it's also somewhat on a recline. And I have a good amount of legroom to work with here, which is fantastic to see for a sedan of this size. This is on par with the BMW 3 Series. I think it's actually a little bit better than the Audi A4 I recently reviewed, especially for the second row seating area. It seems to be a bit more spacious and more family friendly. Now, of course, if you do have a family, I think going with the GLC might be a better alternative, or even the GLB. But if you're somebody that's focused on just going with a sedan, I think the C-Class is definitely going to give you enough interior spacing where you can have people and smaller children around the size of maybe 4.5 to 5 feet tall. They should be very comfortable, but also I think even average sized adults are not going to be complaining at all when it comes to legroom and even headroom. But speaking of headroom, I do think that people around the height of maybe 6 feet tall and above will hit their head on the headliner, although one observation I do have for the sedan is that the second row seats do sit a bit lower to maximize the interior spacing. And that is one thing that's standing out to me about this generation, is that it seems as though Mercedes-Benz is really focused on the interior and the layout as well, and it just really adds that comfort and premium quality that you really want to see for a sedan in this market. Now, moving on to the center seat, the center hump is very aggressive, of course, with this car being rear-wheel drive biased, but there are some good placements for your feet. However, for a sedan of this size and with its width, I just don't think you'll be able to fit a third person back here comfortably or practically. You could try squeezing in that third person on a very short drive, but on longer road trips, I think people are definitely going to be complaining about the lack of shoulder room, but also even the lack of legroom as well. But I do think this is a bit more spacious overall than what I've seen in this segment. And then on the driver's side, I adjusted the seat to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have plenty of legroom to work with here. And really, to be quite honest, the interior of this car is quite pleasant. It's a place you want to be, even if you're not driving. As a passenger, I just think that overall this car is really an upgrade over the prior generation, but also I think just when it comes to the materials they used, the refinement, the quality, this is definitely a standout in the compact sedan market. Also back here you will have two rear air vents. Now we do not have heated outboard seats on this model. And rounding out the rear seating area, you do get a center armrest with two cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power trunk. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 12.5 cubic feet of room to work with, which is better than the Alfa Romeo Giulia, it's better than the Genesis G70, on par with the Audi A4, and falls a bit short compared to the BMW 3 Series. But I think that Mercedes-Benz is understating how much cargo space you actually have here, because this big box is taking away from the perception a bit. But I was able to fit all my camera gear today and then some. So it's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, and I think I could slide in a few more items as well. So if you are going on a road trip with a family or a significant other, I think you could easily fit 4 to 5 bags of luggage. Now, one really cool feature about the C300 is that the second row seats fold in a 40-20-40 split manner. Now, you can fold them in 60-40 if you really want to, but if you have those situations where maybe you have skis and snowboards or very long items, but you also have passengers, you can have them sit on the outboard seats and also still be able to fit that longer item, which I think is really practical and great to see. But one minor feature that will get lost in everything, but I've noticed this throughout this entire review with Mercedes-Benz, is the small details. So on either side of the rear cargo area, you're going to notice a button. And by pulling down on that button, the second row seats fold automatically. And normally we only see that for crossovers, but to see that for a compact sedan, that's really impressive. Then on the left side of the rear cargo area, we'll have some netting for some smaller items, such as your first aid kit. And of course, as we've seen across the board for a lot of brands right now, there is no spare tire underneath the floor mat. And then once you're done, just press the button and the trunk will close automatically. So we are now behind the wheel of the 2022 Mercedes Benz C300. After spending about 2 or 3 hours with this car, I want to see how it compares to the BMW 330i, Audi A4, possibly even the Alfa Romeo Giulia and Genesis G70. For the first time in about 20 to 25 years, I feel as though that BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi simultaneously have 3 sedans that are actually at the pinnacle of where they're at when it comes to technology, performance, and even luxury. You know, I think we look back maybe late 90s, early 2000s, and we remember the days of the E-Class versus the BMW 5 Series. But I think we've tried finding ways to really have that close competitive nature again. And the 3 brands just never seem to align at the same time. Because with Mercedes-Benz, with the last generation, it still came out right at the end of the B8.5 gen for the Audi A4. Also, BMW was still giving us that F Series, 3 Series, and it was just not that great at all when it comes to the driving dynamics. So they never really were all on the same level where you could say that, wow, this is a very difficult decision if you are a consumer. But now I think we're there. And that's why I really want to take this deep dive and understand exactly what the C300 is all about. Now, Mercedes-Benz tends to focus more on luxury, where they're not going to give you aggressive driving dynamics, especially for the C300. You're not going to have a beefy steering wheel. You're not going to have a stiff suspension. You're not going to have tight steering. And nothing's changed for 2022. In fact, this feels very much like the E-Class I had driven about 6 months ago, where it's not going to be putting you on the edge of your seat. You're not going to get thrown back in your seat either during a very heavy and aggressive acceleration. This car is really meant for that driver who wants to have that quality. You want to have that car that, you know, is that step up, that at around $45,000 to $50,000, you're getting your money's worth. And especially for the interior, because I think now when it comes to luxury, everything's all about technology. Those seem to be really intertwined right now. And with this new user interface, the full digital gauge cluster, I think we're finally there for Mercedes-Benz. We're now at a very high point for the brand. So let's get on the highway here. Let's see what the performance is like. And it gets up to speed pretty quickly. Unfortunately, we do have a slower driver getting on the highway here, so really couldn't push it, but we did get up to highway speeds, which is really all that we needed for this test drive. But one thing that really stands out to me is the mild hybrid system. And I talked about that very briefly with the E450 that I reviewed back in late 2021. And Mercedes-Benz is the first brand that I have noticed that has really focused and emphasized on this 48-volt mild hybrid system. Because a lot of brands will downplay what it's offering, what it does, the impact that it has, but you notice immediately what this car is offering, what that mild hybrid system is giving you. Because if you were to drive a 2022 back-to-back with a 2021, you're gonna notice that this car is a lot smoother, that the gear shifts are crisper. Because what you are gonna notice that the 9-speed is far more refined, and I think it's really being helped by that mild hybrid system, because you would look at the Audi A4 and also the BMW 330i, and you would love the 8-speed automatic transmissions in those cars, but not necessarily the Mercedes-Benz C300 with the 9-speed. But I think now they finally figured it out. It finally feels like every other car in this market where the gears are just shifting at the right points, and it's not really like giving you that fake performance feel that I have experienced in the past with Mercedes-Benz. Now, steering is relatively light. It's not going to give you a lot of weight in the corners. You're not going to get a lot of feedback, and that's never really been Mercedes-Benz's MO in this market. They're more focused on just giving you a car that you are certainly going to love on a daily basis. And what I'm going to say here is this, that you don't need aggressive handling. You don't need a stiffer suspension for this car, because I think having more of that lighter steering, having more of that lighter feel with this platform really fits the character of the interior and the driving environment that you find yourself in on a daily basis. Because even though we don't have genuine leather seats, the MB Tech's leatherette upholstery is really comfortable. But also I noticed that they redesigned the seats so they're a bit more aggressive. The bolstering really keeps you in place, but also I think there's a bit more comfort as well. Compared to last generation, I feel as though the 2022 model is making a statement in a variety of ways, because I think you could look back on the 4th generation and say, you know what, there is something missing. You couldn't quite put your finger on it, but you knew that Mercedes-Benz could go an extra mile, that they could go one step further. And I feel as though that now for the 2022 model, they've done that. And it might be the technology, because I really wasn't a big fan of that screen that just connected, that big 2-foot-long piece screen. I don't like it in the new BMWs, and I don't necessarily liked it in the older Mercedes-Benz products. Whereas with this tablet-like touchscreen, it's very high quality, and also I like the fact that the digital gauge cluster is by itself. I think that Mercedes-Benz finally figured it out, where you now have more of a fighter jet-like cockpit, but also I feel as though that the interior is wrapping around me more. I feel more secure in this car than I did in the prior generation. Also, I love the way the dashboard is designed, and also the infotainment system is really geared towards you. It's kind of placed towards you, so you're not really reaching for anything on the far right. So let's get back on the highway here. Hopefully there's no one in front of me. It puts the power down very well. Very linear power band, and you can get up to speed extremely quickly. I don't believe the 6 second 0 to 60 time at all. I think it's probably closer to 5.5 seconds, which would be in line with the Audi A4 and also the BMW 330i. Now, I do want to get back to the mild hybrid system for a minute though, because I think for a lot of consumers, they don't really know what the mild hybrid system is offering. It's almost as if you need an engineering degree to understand exactly how the mild hybrid system helps out for the 2022 model compared to last generation. And really what I'm going to say here is this, that not only does it help out with the gear shifts, but it also helps out with the overall efficiency of this sedan. But it just seems as though that this is a more well-rounded luxury sedan than it was in the past. And when you compare it to an Audi A4 or a BMW 330i, this feels closer when it comes to performance to those two cars than it did in the past. And I think that was ultimately what was missing for this sedan, because last generation was a major leap forward over the W204 generation. But I think now Mercedes-Benz has finally hit the nail on the head. Nice brake feel as well. Oh, right through the red light, and you're on camera. You can't do that. That is horrible. Now, since we are stuck at a red light, might as well go over the interior layout of this car. Also, of course, the front vision as well. So, love the full digital gauge cluster, which is now customizable in more ways than one. You can go back to home. Let's put it in navigation mode, and now I can see, let's put it in navigation mode. And now I have the nice navigation screen in front of me, very much like BMW and also Audi as well. I feel as though now this system is certainly closer in line with the Audi's virtual cockpit, and also even the user interface as well, closer to the Audi's MMI user interface. Also, of course, with the nice infotainment system, tablet-like. Also, what I like too is that it's not in your line of sight. It's not going to draw your attention away from the driving experience. Now, speaking of the driving experience and also your front vision, you have plenty of it. Nice panoramic view. A-pillars are somewhat aggressive, so keep that in mind. It will create a blind spot at red lights or stop signs. But then looking out your side mirrors, you do have a good amount of vision to work with. I can see everything that's in my blind spots. And looking out back, you're going to have a smaller window, of course, with the way the C300 is shaped. And the rear headrests don't really get in that much of the way. So that's really great to see. But ultimately, what I like about the new C300 is that it feels as though Mercedes-Benz really focused on the smaller details that might have been lacking for the last generation, where you have a lot more technology you can interact with, but also it's easier to use as well. But really though, what this car is giving you at the end of the day, I feel, is a lot of refinement, a lot of rigidity with this chassis, but also that small taste of what an S-Class is going to give you. Even though if you can't afford a $100,000 car, this right here at around 50 to 55, I think is really more reflective of the luxury car market than other sedans in this segment, like the Alfa Romeo Giulia, Lexus IS 350, and also I even think the Genesis G70. The new G70, love the refresh, but the interior just doesn't match up with the rest of the lineup. I think Genesis go much further than they have with the new G70, but the Mercedes Benz C300 I think is totally a winner. And really, when you look at what they've done, where you now have different trim levels to choose, a lot of packages, a lot of features, this is exactly what you want to see in the luxury car market. And that if you do have a budget at around $55,000, $60,000, you can feel good knowing that you bought a car that really is all about that luxury and going one step further. And really, I think this right here might be the best C-Class generation we have ever seen. And I think a lot of that is reflective of how Mercedes-Benz is focusing on giving this car more S-Class-like aesthetics, but also having that more S-Class-like driving experience and driving dynamics. I just think that this really is a major leap forward, and I think definitely worth taking a look at if you are searching for a new luxury sedan. So to wrap up this review, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for the 2022 Mercedes-Benz C300? Ultimately, it's the interior that's the lasting impression, at least for me. I know exactly what I'm going to get when it comes to performance, when it comes to the driving dynamics, when it comes to handling, because Mercedes-Benz never gives their non-AMG models really anything that's going to give you a lot of feedback in corners or really put you back in your seat. Although I do love the 48-volt mild hybrid system that I think really helps out with the gear shifting, but also the smoothness of the accelerations. I do think that the 48-volt mild hybrid system isn't getting enough attention at all, and compared to the prior model year, I think it really helps out with this 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. But it's really all about the interior. That, I think, is the major selling point for this car and this generation. The full digital gauge cluster has been revamped. The resolution and quality is really one step further than it was before. Also, I feel as though it's easier to use as well. And I love the different displays that you can showcase here. And I also like the head-up display, which is easy to read, but also that's customizable as well. Love to see that. But really the infotainment system, I think, is the major talking point. I felt as though that the Mercedes-Benz C-Class from last generation was missing something. That it wasn't necessarily the driving dynamics, it wasn't the luxury, it was the technology. I wasn't a huge fan of having the digital gauge cluster and the infotainment system as one piece. And I have no idea why BMW is going in that direction. I think that's a huge mistake. But now that we have this tablet-like touchscreen that flows into the center console, it's very easy to use. It's very easy to read while you're driving. It doesn't get in your line of sight at all. And I think it's definitely reflective of a car priced around maybe $80,000 rather than $50,000 like the one I have today. But I love the way the dashboard is designed, the way it flows into the center console, and getting rid of the touchpad. I think that's actually a plus. Usually I'm a big fan of having a rotary dial or a touchpad just because I prefer using a touchscreen or user interface that way. But as solely a touchscreen, I think this is very easy to use and very easy to get acclimated with. And that's why I'm actually rather excited about what Mercedes-Benz is going to be giving us over the next few years with their user interfaces and just interior layouts in general. I do love this. I think that this is a major leap forward, and I think this is definitely a car worth taking a look at and worth considering, just because we don't really see this right now in the luxury compact sedan market. BMW isn't giving you an interior quite like this, and neither is Audi. Even though Audi, I think the technology is very visually appealing, the overall driving environment for the C-Class is one step further. And I think that there might be some drawbacks here and there. There might be things that maybe you'll love about this car and maybe not so much when it comes to the driving dynamics. But from an overall perspective, the new C-Class, I think, is a head-turner and is exactly what you would expect from Mercedes-Benz, especially at this price point. And that's why I feel, even if you don't want to add any packages or extra features, at around $50,000, this pretty much embarrasses a lot of non-German brands for sure. Even though Alfa Romeo is going to give you more of a performance-oriented experience, and same with Lexus, and maybe even Genesis as well. This right here, though, is exactly what you want to see in 2022. And I gotta tip my hat to Mercedes Benz. I think they've done a fantastic job with this car. And even though from the exterior, not much is different compared to the outgoing generation, it's the interior that I think buyers, drivers, passengers are definitely going to love. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future.
You've forgotten your phone.
And I will see you guys next time.